How bad's the glare on the glasses?
Oh, it'll be good. It'll. Well, let me make one more quick look and just be sure.
So I can take them off.
Oh no, you're good. Turn that way a little bit. Oh yeah, you're good.
Okay.
You're golden.
Always the things I worry about now that I wear glasses.
I know, and well, us being retired swimsuit models, it's like.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, the days were the days of old.
I have missed you. For my audience out there, this is Chip Duncan. Now, give me your official title and all that good stuff.
Oh, so I'm the executive director of the Veterans Memorial Museum.
That's it's
It's like this is where we need to edit out.
it'll all work in the
It'll
wash.
all work in the end. Yeah,
Warts and
yeah,
all, we're
yeah.
pretty
So
good
no,
on it.
I'm the executive director of the Veterans Memorial Museum. I've been in that position since 2011. Started here in 2008, so it's been quite a long ride here. So.
Now, that portion of my show is God and Country, and I will say it's very nice getting to talk with you because I know you from the God side of things. I got to meet you at a men's Bible study
Mm-hmm.
at our local church in Chehalis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer part of the Chehalis community. I'm way up in God's country
In
and
God's
in Seebeck. Not like, and I always tell folks, it's not like Lewis County is bad. You got Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens in your backyard. The view's pretty nice from here. And if you grew up here and know the trails and the lakes, this is a good place to
it's a
be
good
from.
spot. Yeah.
How did you get to Lewis County? Because you're not a local.
No, not a local. I mean, long story of it all is basically I was an Air Force brat, so we were always moving around, um, and bounced around several different states. But then in late 90s, I'm going to go 1998. That was when I gave my life to the Lord. And that was when I was in college still. And finished up my degree in architecture in 1999. And then just worked in that field for a very, very short time. And I was still young. Um, so I was,
I
and it
remember.
was, yeah, I remember those days. And now the opportunity for missions just came up, and I just kind of just jumped into it. Just really felt called to the Lord to do that, and we ended up not going where we wanted the Lord to send us, obviously, because that's not how it works. Ended up going to Budapest, Hungary, and serving there
Wow.
in ministering to the Hungarian military, um, because it was just a strange series of events prior to my arrival that had created that relationship where they were looking for conversational English teachers in their version of West Point. So I was teaching cadets. Um, and it was kind of one of those situations, again, kind of a God thing of it's kind of like, hey, yeah, you have a military background. And I'm like, no, time out. No, it's like my dad was in the military. I was just the kid being dragged around from one Air Force base to the next. And they're like, no, that's enough. And so yeah, it was actually pretty funny because I had a person that I was replacing. We go to her going away party, and I go up to her and I say, so do you have any words of wisdom? And she gives this maniacal laugh and then turns on her heel and walks away. And I was like, cool, I'm on my own.
Wow.
But it
Wow.
was neat because that opportunity really was an eye opener. Worked with a lot of young men, a lot of young women that were trying to figure out their place in life. And the only reason why they wanted to learn English was because they knew that if they were good enough at it, they could pass the NATO test. You could pass the NATO test. It meant you could work for NATO, pay increases, rank increases, these sorts of things like this, that, and the other. But one of the other strong things that we worked was with the chaplaincy, and the chaplaincy had been disbanded in 1947 when the communists took over. and then Hungary was the first Partnership for Peace, former Warsaw Pact country to join the Partnership for Peace, and they were like, "Hey, in order to join NATO, you have to have a chaplaincy." And they literally went to 12 people, and they're like, "Yeah, you." Gave them ranks, everything from a second lieutenant all the way up to a brigadier general, and
Whoa.
all these people had basically just done their conscription time in the Hungarian Communist Army, and then they had gone to seminary and they were pastors. But it was a model that it was like, we just want the membership of the church to completely die off, and then we turn your church into a museum. That was the only reason why they had pastors. Um, and so they were motivated to some degree, but they were not trained. Um, they had a hard time making any kind of headway. And I worked with an organization called Olive Branch International, which was a suicide prevention in the military. And the guy was a chaplain, and he said something really, really important to me. He said, an army never understands it needs a chaplain until it goes to war. And then for all of the triumph filled with tragedy of the Iraq War in 2004, two brigades of the Hungarian army deployed for the first time since the Second World War. And they took two chaplains with them, and then the military went, "Oh, this is why we need chaplains." And so then they were kind of more interested in what we were trying to do of training them, and building them up. And so anyways, yeah, so that was what I worked with there. But of course, being a missionary, you have to raise funds. They don't just pay for it like would be really nice, but no, you've got to go to church. And like anything else in marketing, you gotta use your connections, use people that get your into these churches, get your 15 minutes on the stage to convince them, like, hey, you should support my ministry, this is what we're doing. Anyways, so the Centralia Community Church of God in Centralia, my friend was the youth pastor there, used that connection, got my 15 minutes, and we arrived for fundraising. And um, he mentions, like, hey, there's a military museum in town, and I was like, oh, I am there. I love military, history. And so I went there to the old museum that was in Centralia, that was about a quarter of the size of what this facility is, and was absolutely hit. There's something different about it. It told the personal stories of the veterans, and there was also really kind of a God thing about it too, as well. And ended up just very, very moved in the spirit, I want to say, by the presence of the museum. And so then I did what you don't do as a missionary. You got 15 minutes. I probably talked about 10 minutes of my very, very spiritual encounter with this museum. I understood that the founder, Lee Grimes, was going to the same church. I had him stand up. Everybody gave him a round of applause. And yeah, so then, as they always do with missionaries, they'll have them do their 15 minutes, and then you're like, you know what, we're going to get to know you better, and we're going to have a food event. And when you're serving in a country like Hungary, they're like, "Oh, you serve in Hungary, you must be hungry." And I was like, "Never heard that joke before, ever." So, anyways, yeah. So sat down, ended up being sat down at the table with Lee, and we started talking. And what was really neat was both of our experiences were very, very similar in that we came from a military family background. Um, Yet both he and I had tried to join the military, but because I had asthma and he had a heart murmur, the military was like, "Yeah, we don't want you, kid. Get out of here." Yet from that upbringing and that background of military history, we loved it. So we made a great connection. And then he said, he offered to open up the treasure box. He was like, "Hey, I got some stuff from Europe that was picked up by some of our GIs. Like, do you know anything about it?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I love studying European military history." And so he invited me to the back room, like the storage room of all the cool stuff that isn't on display yet. And so we're going through boxes after boxes, and I'm explaining the history of these artifacts, and he just kind of stopped the conversation midway. He's like, would you like my job one day? And I was like, oh, don't tempt me like that. So, and I was in 2004. And so for the next about 3.5, almost 4 years, we kept in contact. I explained, hey, I've got a job here to do. I want to finish up the ministry that I have in Hungary with the military. I want the Hungarians to completely take that over. Um, and then I'll be ready to go. And that happened, October of 2007. We finally got actual Hungarian legislature that pretty much removed a lot of the restrictions on the chaplains in order their ability to serve and minister. Um, yeah, I even got a really sketchy phone call in the middle of the night of just like, "Hey, we know what you've been doing with the military." Like, "Oh, is this where I disappear into a hole and never be seen from again?" But it was actually a member of parliament that was wanting to see more Christianity growing in their country. Um,
Right on.
yeah.
That's
So, but yeah. So in 2007, they passed some legislation that allowed chaplains to be able to do their job because, like with a lot of the former Soviet bloc countries, it wasn't like, hey, we just kick all the communists out. It was like, no, no, you guys know how to run the country. We keep you around. Please just don't be as political as you were before. So there was a lot of that leftover communist mentality that churches, not something you want to have in a military. So, anyways, that patched up, and I thought, gosh, we just put our kids into Hungarian school. And Lee called up and he said, "Hey, Patty, who was the administrative assistant at the time, she passed away. She's like, hey, there's a position here. We want to offer it to you." And I was like, yeah, I just put the kids in the school. I don't want to pull them out, have them come to American school where they're going to school where all they spoke was Hungarian. Um, and so we waited. And so then on July 8th, that was my first day. July 8th of 2008 was the first day of working here. I've been here ever since. And so um, that was how I ended up here.
yeah. Well, first off, thank you and the work of Lee Grimes and
Oh,
the
yeah.
folks before, because
Monumental.
I will say, one thing is soldiers that we the heart of my program is getting their story out
Mm-hmm.
there, because there's when I came back at the beginning of the war and had went to the local VFW, I was shocked at almost all the World War II veterans were gone.
Mm-hmm.
There were It was still pretty much being ran by the Korean War vets, and a
Mm-hmm.
few of the Vietnam vets were stepping up, but it was the stories are disappearing
Yeah.
at an incredible rate, and the difference with this museum compared to some of the others I've been to in the state that honor our military and military service, there there's a story behind every
Mm-hmm.
artifact here, every item here. Personally getting to, I don't know how many of these displays where I know the people. Lewis County, we have that saying, if you're not related, you will be.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so the families of people that I know that are here, the items here, first and foremost, thank you for saving and preserving that
Mm-hmm.
that history, because it's uh, I think it means a lot to the soldiers who maybe have only come here once, or just know that it's here. There's something that's peaceful about when you drive by on I-5 and you see this museum. You know that you're being remembered. You know that your service is being
Mm-hmm.
remembered, and it doesn't matter if you're Army, Army Guard, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard. They're all here. Uh, any Space Force yet? Any?
No, no, no. Those guys are still sporting their double-breasted uniform. They don't want to give them up yet.
Still
Uh, but
still
yeah,
unicorns out
yeah,
there.
still unicorns out there and everything. Although actually, I did. They had we actually had a reenlistment ceremony with Space Force here. I was like
Oh,
really, really like jealous of the uniforms and everything. Like,
right on, right on.
but yeah, no, and well, we even have Merchant Marine, which of course during times of war they do get um, federalized, I guess you want to say, with Navy personnel because not supposed to have guns on civilian ships, but during war times of war you can do that. But yeah, we have a display on those as well, both men and women. Um, yeah, we go all the way back from the Revolutionary War all the way up to modern day.
I
And
was gonna
yeah,
say you have a uh, quite an extensive collection, and it was impressive seeing. I love seeing the 13 star flag.
mm-hmm.
Uh, my ancestors in Virginia that are buried, that were in the Revolutionary War. Their grave markers, when they put up the flags
Mm-hmm.
on Memorial Day, they put up that 13
The
star
13
flag,
one, yeah.
and so it's just very,
Were they
there
were they Culpeper County by any chance?
Wise County is where I know most of
Oh,
the
okay.
family was
All
back
right. I was
there.
gonna say we might be related then.
Hey,
It's
it's
possible.
a lot of those families from Virginia, North Carolina moved to Lewis County. How many volunteers do you have here?
Oh gosh, on a regular basis, we probably have, I would estimate about 20. And then when we do our large events, we've got 40, sometimes 50 volunteers. People want to volunteer in different ways. When we have our car show, we have all hands on deck, and a bunch of people that they come out of the woodwork, like that's what they want to help with. But on a daily basis, we're about 20, 25 that work throughout the week. We'll have tour guides that just come in one day a week, and at the front desk, we've got a kind of rotating basis of about 7 volunteers that come through, and they pick each day to come and work at the front desk, and then we've got people that are just they come on Thursday and they restore vehicles. In fact, they restored this World War One ambulance. That's another group of about 5, and
I was gonna say this is in beautiful shape. This is
yeah,
World War One.
a
That
World
just
War One ambulance. Yeah, no, no. And so we got that, and then we've got cleanup crews that come in, and they do yard work. Another set of crew that comes in on Fridays that just cleans all the floors and polishes the glass, and so there's many ways that people are volunteering. So on a regular weekly basis, about 20-25. So
how did you get so many authentic artifacts? I mean, this is I have been to and it could have changed by now, but outside of some of the tanks and larger vehicles, you honestly have a better collection than Camp Murray's museum. You have a better collection than the JBLM museum. Uh,
yeah, it's
it's I was the difference was like night and day. I mean, I
yeah,
was when in my recruiting days, I got to bring the recruits here to show them as part of trying to teach them their military heritage to bring them here, and even the recruits would probably tell you it was like there's a lot more connection here with every soldier because every soldier had family members that were, again, Navy, Marine,
hmm
Coast Guard, Air
hmm
Force, so on. So there was definitely more of an inclusive military feel about
right.
this place.
Well, yeah, I think part of it is, and as a recruiter, you're kind of well aware. You have kind of certain sections and certain types of, I almost want to say, topography um, of the people that live in the community, and this is obviously a very logger-oriented, frontier um, based community that is, they, 100 years ago, they were out there in the woods burning 4,000 calories, chopping down trees and going through the log mill, and they only ate 3,000 calories. So it was a strong stock, and very, very, nation community oriented type of people, because you have to have that community sense, or you're going to suffer and die. It's not like the government's here to help you in every single corner of the larger cities, and so we had a lot of people that it was, well, I don't want to log, so I'm going to go in the military. Or World War II rolls around, and 1,200 graduates from Centralia High School alone go and serve in the military, drafted, volunteered, or otherwise. Um, and today a lot of recruiter happens a lot of the time in the Midwest, because again, it's that agricultural sense of community service to country, that sort of thing, along with, well, frankly, just the physical fitness of it. Although now everybody's doing round bales, but the days of bucking 50 pounders onto a truck for high school students, it built up that physical fitness, whereas more of the urban areas, you're not getting that. But so I think a lot of that has to do with why we have such a large amount of available donations, I guess I would say. Although I also remind people, I was like, this isn't all just Lewis County. We have stuff from all over the country. We've gotten the Operation Overlord D-Day We actually have a signals officer that was Bigot certified. Was the ultra top security level. You had the keys to the kingdom. You knew the invasion date was June 6, 1944. We were dropping paratroopers on June 5th. So that was the bigot code. But all his stuff was mailed into us from his widow in Michigan, because family members had come by here on vacation, stopped, and they saw it, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this would be the best place for dad's stuff to be." So we've got it from all over the place. And there's a lot of times stuff, people move out of here to be closer to kids or whatever, and they're from the Midwest or back east or something like that, and they bring their family artifacts. They come here and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this would be the best place to donate the artifacts to." So it's not all just Lewis County or even Western Washington. We got stuff from all over the country. So that's kind of nice to give a little more cross section of things. But as you said, you read a lot of the names, it's kind of like, oh yeah, he was my neighbor, he was my dad's friend, that sort of thing. That does happen here too, but it's not exclusive. So, um, but that's how we mostly get the stuff. Um, and we never we never had to pay for anything, which is nice. I'm going to go throw the Army Museum underneath the bus. I went back and visited that, um, back in it was last year, April last year, because they'd finally completed it, and I was like, oh well, let's go check this museum out. And I'm thinking it's the Army Museum, right? I'm going to see Ulysses S. Grant uniform on display. I'm going to see George Washington's sword. I'm going to see this, and I'm like wandering around going, I don't see any of that. Like, they had one brigadier general uniform from the Civil War, and it was some medical doctor nobody had ever heard of. And finally, I talked to the docent. I said, "Where did you get all this stuff?" Like, "Oh, we went out and bought stuff from collectors." I was like, "Oh, that explains the randomness." Okay. So,
Now, I remember when the museum was over in Centralia,
mhm,
and the great work and effort and fundraising to get this
yeah,
this section built. But then you all get hit with the 2007 flood, where a lot of us lost our homes. A lot
yeah,
of it put this community upside down for a while.
mhm,
Shut down I-5 for a few weeks.
yep.
How did the museum fare in that? Because you're not exactly in the highest point of Lewis County.
No, that was an interesting one. So when we built the museum, we started. I want to say we broke ground. Of course, I wasn't here, so I fuzzy on me. I want to say we broke ground around 2003, and the board of directors at the time said, um, building code said we had to have it 12 inches above the '96 flood, which was the highest record of flood on at the time. And thankfully, I'm going to, again, give it to God's providence. Members of the board said, let's be proactive and let's build it 36 inches above the '96 flood level. So when we're walking in here, you got to climb up 4 feet of stairs, basically. Um, and yet, still, even then, we had 11 inches of water inside the museum.
Whoa.
So, um, and that was a devastating event, because of course we had just been open, not even 2 years at that point, um, when it hit. And of course it was super devastating to our community. And I know Lee actually emailed me, because I was still in Hungary at that time, and it's even a little bit of a personal thing for me, because it was, the job was offered to me in October, and I thought, gosh, and I always kind of think, well, I didn't go through that. I didn't help out. So there's a little of that guilt that I wasn't here to be a part of that, only showing up in July of the following year. But, it was, Lee came in. I think he couldn't get in here till about 4 days afterwards. This whole area was not tiled; it was carpet. That was completely ruined. Lee had actually built all the display cabinets and had sealed them so that bugs couldn't crawl in and eat the artifacts. So 11 inches just went right over the glass, and so it filled all of these display cabinets with water. and he had to go in there with a drill and just drill holes to get them to drain. And it's funny. There's I mean, side story on it all. So we have a display over there that has basically, what the men carried during World War II, what the infantry soldier carried during World War II, and we had C rations and K rations, and of course, in military thought, whatever goes in has to come out. So each one of these ration boxes had a little roll of toilet paper in it, single ply, because it's got to be that way. Well, we had broken out one of these K rations, and there's the cigarettes and the food and the tins and everything, and of course the little roll of toilet paper. And that toilet paper sat in water for nearly 5 days. Right? It's still on display. It's just a little bit brown. We're talking when we say the greatest generation, they're the greatest generation because they wiped with that. So,
the John Wayne toilet paper.
Yeah, the John Wayne toilet paper.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lee, when he finally got in here, saw all the devastation. He was heartbroken. He was like, I don't know if we can ever come back from this. And he put a little plead out on the radio, called up the radio stations, is like, hey, we're completely swamped. We weren't able to save any artifacts. And he put the radio call out, and then he said it was an army of people that came out, because, and he even pointed out, he's like, some of these people, had 12, 24, 36 inches of mud inside their house, yet they were like, forget my house, I'm going to save this place. Just absolutely incredible response. And sometimes a little too incredible. There's always the story. Dale Engel and Lee Grimes, of course, they were kind of heading up all of the recovery effort and cleaning stuff up, getting the carpet out, trying to save the artifacts. The upstairs was turned into a conservation effort, and some people would just come by just to kind of see what was going on. And so this guy showed up, and he's kind of walking around, and Dale, being Dale, he walks up to me and says, well, you're here to work, or you're just going to gawk all day long? And the gentleman reached out his hand. He says, yeah, I'm here to see what I can do. My name is Chris Gregoire. My wife, Governor Gregoire, is up there at the county right now. And he said, I'm a Vietnam vet. I just want to see what I can do. And and almost at that point, little backstory on the museum was how it started. It didn't start as this. It was Lee felt called by God to go through the community and start recording the stories of veterans. And at that time he started, there was still a handful of World War One veterans that were still alive. And so he was just going door to door, getting these interviews. And after he'd collected all these interviews, he's realized, well, these are the stories that I have, and I need to share them with the world. And so that was the spurn of the museum. But all of those videos were on VHS. I mean, because it was the '80s. Let's go back. We didn't have the fancy recording devices we have today. And that box was on a bottom shelf, and it had been completely covered in water and mud, and he brought him out, and Lee was just absolutely in tears because that was the foundation of the museum. And Chris, he asked, what's wrong? What is it? And he said, started explaining. And Chris says, let me see what our archivists in Olympia can do. So we took the box, got it to Olympia, and their archivists were kind of like, yeah, this isn't something that we have the capability to do. So then it was the only people that could restore the videos was the Library of Congress and their conservationists. And that was apparently a very pretty penny. I don't know the exact amount, but my understanding is that Chris actually paid out of his pocket to have every one of those videos restored and converted over to digital. And so now we have DVDs, and now we have them on digital, all of those interviews. And so it was just kind of one of those things. And actually, side story on that is Christine and Greg, they've moved to out of state, and Chris is donating all of his stuff from his service in Vietnam, and so we're gonna have a display on him here pretty soon with the connection, which I think is pretty neat. So
That 6 degrees of separation, because I had done some security before when his wife, the governor, was on Fort Lewis, but also I fueled her Chinook, or
Mm-hmm.
our Chinook
That she wrote in, yeah.
that she rode on for uh, to observe the floods during that,
Yeah,
because I
wow,
had
yeah.
because I lived on the other side of the freeway from here, and I
Mm-hmm.
had 4 foot of water through my place, and had lost my home, had got my kids
Yeah.
scattered out to different folks, and then was activated for that couple weeks during the flood.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, yeah, it was a rough time for this community, and I know, just as as the folks here were grieving over that process, I was grieving the mission on the other side, because we had also just got it
Yeah.
going,
Yeah.
and ended up with water going through there.
Yeah.
In both cases, though, I think that they came back stronger with better ideas on how to seal some things,
Mm-hmm.
and how to, like, we are in this flood zone, these are the things that we have to take care
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. But yeah, and then I mean, even continuing on, uh, the so of course we recovered from it. It was very interesting. A lot of the paper products that were built after the Second World War, those were the artifacts that just completely turned to mush. It was prior to the Second World War that, like, toilet paper. Uh, those were we were actually able to conserve those, and most of them are back on display if they were paper items. But the neat part was actually coming in July, and of course we had just reopened because we were shut down through, I think, June or May or June, I think. And of course I'm handed the books and I'm working through all the money, but the community outreach, the community outpouring, the volunteerism, um, it was looking at the books and the amount of money that we were taking in, the amount of money we were spending out. Those months that we were closed down, the community response was so great that it was like we had never shut down. We were completely financially fine, which,
Wow.
was amazing because uh, Lee and Dale had actually gone down when FEMA showed up, and FEMA made the announcements: "Hey, if you're a business, if you're an organization, we're not here to help you. We're only helping, the people with housing." And they were like, "Well, I guess we're leaving." Turned around and said, "Well, if the community can support us, then that'll be it." And yeah, there was a lot of good donations, a lot of volunteer help to help out, and I want to say there's like nearly 30,000 tiles that were laid down by basically 5 people who had never laid tile in their life. Yeah, we've had professional tile people come in and like, "Who laid this? They did a really good job." So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty neat. But yeah, that was a flood of 2007, and we came out on top of that. Uh, Better, like you said, better than you had started with, and understanding things. And we actually were able to add, got another nice donation to add another 18 inches of waterproof cinder block that's around the building now. So that in case there is another flooding event, we just bring sandbags in and sandbag doors and windows, and we've got 18 more inches of protection. So,
Right.
but we've had, I'd say, 4 major flooding events since then, and the worst one was 2009, and that one we had one step or 6 inches before water was going to start coming in the building. But it did finally recede, and but we had a whole team here of people, and made the call at about 11 o'clock at night. We just started pulling everything that was 3 feet and under, brought all the tables down from the event center, and just started stacking artifacts on top of that. And just, but the water's receded, so we're
Praying
happy.
for you, pray for the best.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm on the slow boat here.
it's good.
There's there was a lot of effort put into this. I know that there were soldiers who, you get a lot of donations of uniforms.
Mhm.
I remember Lee taking me up one time and showing me, and I was in shock, because I had seen all the uniforms, and I asked him, and he said, kind of, it was I think the soldier or the service member's way of connecting, wanting to be remembered,
Hmm.
even though it might never be on display, but it was a way to know that their service mattered.
Yeah, yeah, we get a lot. We have a lot more uniforms now. A lot. And that's kind of the oh, it's kind of one of the banes, but yet, just like you said, it's that way to remember. We get when a veteran passes away. Finally the family kind of comes in and they're just kind of going through things. And a lot of the times, it's a father or grandfather or a mother or grandmother, um, and people want to have that connection with them, but it always boils down to, like, they're more than willing to kind of grab the medals or the photographs and these kind of things, but when it comes to the uniform, they always, I think, there becomes that mental block of, well, I can put, grandpa's, love me package of the flag and the medals and everything. We can put that on the mantle and always look at grandpa and remember grandpa, which is great. um, but then it comes to the uniform, like, what do we do with the uniform? Is it just going to sit? Whose closet is it going to sit in? So we unfortunately get a lot of just a uniform. But I also look at it, and I mean, anybody who's been in the military, you understand that dress uniform, which is usually the one that we get. It's got the ribbon rack. That ribbon rack that's a record of somebody's service, somebody's accomplishments. Um, every little ribbon has its meaning. And every patch has its meaning. Every service stripe, enlistment stripe, all of those are significations of your service, that is on for display. The hard part is that's usually what they bring me, and I'm kind of like, well, it's kind of hard because I don't really have a way to tell that story. um, my hardest thing is, and I know it's hard for veterans, is it's like, the best thing that a veteran could do would be to literally just take, a few hours out of their life and literally just write down things like, where I was born, where I grew up, why did I join the military? Was it God and country? For some of these Vietnam veterans, it was like, well, it was, army or jail.
As
Um, Side note: my son went to NTC, to cross train in artillery, and silly me, I was like, where is NTC located at? Because I really didn't know, and I really, California. They have Google reviews. My most favorite Google review was, well, I joined the army because I knew I was going to be in prison, but then I went to NTC and decided, well, prison was going to be better. I think NTC actually has like a 1-star review on Google.
I'm surprised he got that high.
Well, you have to
To
leave it
like
1 star, nothing. You can't leave nothing on Google. But anyways, um, recording those. Why did I do what I did? And then what did I do? And I always tell veterans when they're like writing your biography, I like, you don't need to talk about the hard stuff. You need, the best thing is the funny stories. Those are the best ones because those are the ones that really show the humanity out of it all of it. Some of them talk about the losses, and that's unfortunately a part of it as well. But it's not something that we here really want to focus on. We want to focus on what part of the giant cog of the military did you play your little part in, because that's part of a much bigger picture. Um, and that's really hard to do when all I got's a uniform. What we do when we set up displays is there's a bit of a psychology to it. I usually always have to have a uniform, um, and then a photograph, because when you see that uniform, it's to our scale, and then you see the photograph of the face, and you go, "This face was wearing this uniform." You instantly get that connection. This is a real human being. This is somebody who lived and breathed, or is still breathing, in some cases, um, served our country, did their part. What I want to know more. What did they do? How did they do that? So I always tell people, I was like, it's great. I'll take the uniform because I don't want it to be forgotten. But I can't. tell that story with just that. I always have to have something more: photographs, documents, medals. Those sorts of things are great. Even the souvenirs that get brought back. There's always a funny story behind that. That is always adds to that humanity portion of it. And being in this business long enough, I understand the United States soldier, airman, marine, sailor. You know what? They're the best tourists in the entire world. They go all over the place and buy all kinds of weird stuff.
The little shops when you are in a spot where you get the opportunity, there are things that hindsight wish I had bought,
Right.
but didn't, and
Yeah.
it's one of those. It's like, man, that would have been cool to have just to sit on the shelf and
Hmm.
remember. It's I I have noticed with since doing this podcast, a lot of the soldiers are the ones that have respectfully declined have said, well, I didn't serve, I didn't go overseas, I didn't storm the gates, I didn't do
Mm,
that, and they miss the point of, you served during one of the greatest deployment, the largest deployment of, you know since World War II,
hmm.
and they don't feel that uh, all those 16-hour days of loading Connexes, or the train, loading equipment onto the train on the rails, and getting it to the shipyard, and protecting some of the largest ammunition shipments since World War II. They don't feel that they contributed to it because, hey, I wasn't kicking indoors, hey, I,
Right.
I wasn't taking on Al Qaeda, or I wasn't directly fighting in Fallujah, and it's like, you don't understand. None of those units would have been able to do what they did
Yeah.
if it had not been for all that detail work you were doing behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I hope that everybody that served realizes that it's like, you had a bigger part than you realize.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we are the greatest military force in the world, and
Hmm.
it's all those little pieces that get the medal downrange.
Yeah.
That's
That
it's
that is the most vital thing. And if you look at anything in military history, in military warfare, it is not about the soldier. I mean, the soldier is literally the end. The actual fighting arm is actually the end result. But throughout most of the history of warfare, armies have not fought any further than 50 miles from water. Why? You got to transport it. You've got to be able to drink. If your army can't drink, you have an army that can't move. If you have an army that can't move, you have an army that has no point. So,
it's
it's literally just um, the need for everything from beans to bullets matters and makes a difference to an army. Um, when um, when you literally look at that logistic and an understanding, um, going to go ahead and go to the Bible right here. Joshua and the Israelite army, not a professional army, because obviously the Egyptians never trained them to fight because, well, that would be problematic. So you have an unprofessional army. You basically are like, you got some muscle mass. How about you carry this sword? I've never welded that before, I know, but swing. It might work out for you. Um, Not a professional army. They cross the Jordan. They come to Jericho. Jericho is the first walled city in all of antiquity. We have never found a walled city from that time period. Don't even know why it was walled. It was protective most of the time. You came out and you fought over the field that you wanted and for your land, and then you fought on that land, and then you went back into your city or town or whatever. So he's coming up here, not professional army, walled city. There's not even a siege ladder. There's no catapults. That's not invented for another 400 years. Um, and the other part about it is Joshua's army shows up at the worst time because all of the fields have already been harvested. There's no food for his army to eat off of. And Jericho is like, yep, we can sit behind these walls for all the way through the winter because you showed up late, dude. So the inhabitants of Jericho are realizing tactically, yeah, you can be out there, but you're going to be starving in 2 weeks. you're going to have to go start drawing water from the Jordan. Um, and then, of course, the miracle happens. But that was the point. You don't have food, you don't have water for a military. It doesn't matter whether it's back in Joshua's time or even today. The very same thing happens. An army will not move without food and water, and now fuel, and now technology.
What he's saying is your quartermaster corps and logistics are essential to the military, and the difference with the logistics quartermaster corps is there's a lot of civilian jobs when you get out where infantry, not a lot of
Yeah,
positions after
yeah,
you get out.
yeah. I remember when I was in college and I was working for Shucks Auto Parts, now it's O'Reilly's, and my boss, he was a Navy guy. He had served, I think for a dozen or so years and everything, and so I just started talking to him, being military family, and I was like, oh, you're in the Navy? He was like, yeah. I was like, what did you do in the Navy? And he was like, I was a Navy SEAL. And I mean, he was a big, guy. So it was like, really? And he's like, I was like, man, what are you doing here? And he was like, think about it. What is my skill set? And I'm like, well, communications. And he's like, yeah, yeah, great, wonderful. He's like, yeah, I know how to kill people. That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, well, you're a manager of Shucks Auto Parts. I guess you're doing okay. But he was like, yeah. He's like, I got out. And it was like, what can you do? Well, I can shoot somebody from 500 yards.
Yeah. How does that work in the civilian world?
Yeah, it's not an immediate, we got a job for you, which is, again, and he was explaining a lot of people go work for three-letter dirty word companies because, well, that's the only other people that's going to be hiring him in the civilian world. And it's like, okay, this starts to make a lot of sense. And so, yeah, I always, even in my kids when they wanting to join the military, I was like, think of something that's marketable, you know. Yeah, my one boy went into diesel mechanic. Although now he switched to artillery because, well, firing a 777 is way much more fun.
There, I will be honest. My first 5 years was field artillery, and there is nothing like when you have 3 gun batteries firing into the side of a mountain and watching it just go up in smoke.
Yep.
Having said that, my last 10 years were pretty much with aviation, and go aviate. I'm no digging on my artillery brothers and sisters, but yeah, aviation.
Yeah. Well, aviation's nice. They actually really care about you because, if you starve to death or die, well, it's bad because, that's a little more technical than just pull the cord. Yeah, and my other son, he's crew chief on Black Hawks, and yeah, he was
right on.
He was like, yeah, at AIT, I had my own room, we had our own coffee pot and microwave, and
wow,
it's like, yeah, aviation, they want to make sure you survive. They don't want you to suffer. They need you to have 8 hours of sleep. It's actually really, really a good
it's really
section to
it's
go
really
into.
Important, really important.
Yeah.
Now, you and I had talked a few weeks ago. Tell me, there's 2 missions for the museum.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. First mission obviously is, we have, we're sitting in a 6,000 square foot gallery right now that tells stories of veterans from Revolutionary War up to modern day, and that's been the main mission of the museum from its get go, was to make sure that our veterans would not be forgotten, because as we're discussing, each veteran has their own story to tell, and when they pass away, they take those stories with them if they haven't told them. And our job is to, in our whatever capacity that we can, to keep those stories going. There's an old African proverb that says, speak my name and I'll live forever. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here, is keep those names and those memories alive as long as we can. And that's been the primary mission for many, many years. But when my predecessor Lee started the museum, he opened up the first storefront museum, which was there in Centralia that you went through. And he said it was like opening day. One of these veterans just came in, and there was a really small narrow entry foyer place that was the gift shop, and there was a table, little table, and a couple chairs that were there, and the guy literally brought in a little Mr. Coffee maker, and a box of donuts. He's like, this is where I just want to hang out. And so Lee instantly realized, well, this is a, for lack of a better word, a safe space for veterans to come, and they know that the civilian world is not going to be judgmental in a place like this because it would automatically be disrespectful. So it was literally just a place that veterans could come from. Back in that time, there was a lot of World War II veterans who, you know, um, I mean, there's no veteran of any war that hasn't suffered in one way or another a mental health crisis. PTSD. We got great new labels for it, and the labels have changed throughout the years. Um, but when humanity sees what the worst of humanity does to another human being, it will change you for life. And a lot of people look at, well, the World War II generation, gosh, they built America. They were the greatest generation. They came back from war and built the strongest economy, made us into a superpower. And I say, yeah, they had their issues called shell shock, I think, at that time. And they solved it one of two ways. And they either drank themselves to death or they worked themselves to death, or sometimes they did both, which led to a very, very strong uh, country, strong work ethic. Um, but with that, there was also another dynamic that I believe was that sense of community. And so people coming back from World War II, World War One, Spanish American War, American Civil War, so forth and so on, they always kind of came back to community. Um, Most people prior to the Second World War, they lived and died within a 10-mile radius. They just, they were born at home or the local hospital. They lived, they worked, got married, had kids, and died in that community. Their only, change was maybe when they got deployed to the European campaign or the Pacific campaign, and then they came back. Well, of course, one of the dynamics that changed after World War II was one of the things that everybody wanted was a car. And General Motors and Ford and Chrysler were more than willing to provide all those things. And in fact, we even created a highway system off of the idea that, well, if the Russians bomb us, we'd be able to get from one city to the next city. And auto manufacturers were like, oh, this is amazing. But so people now could travel like they'd never traveled before. And the one casualty of that was community. You know, we don't have community like we used to. And so mental health um, has become a problem, especially in the veteran community, because before it was, you came home and you had your parents and your grandparents and probably even your great grandparents, and a lot of those probably also served in a war, and you had somebody to talk to. You had somebody that you trusted that you could talk to. American Legion, VFW posts, they were really great service organization, but man, they were also counseling sessions. You sit around and you talk and you share those experiences and you get to that point of like, oh, Bob over there also was in Battle of the Bulge. He knew what it was like to be freezing to death and trees exploding above me and people dying all around me that I cared about. You got those connections, but see the USA and your Chevrolet, we've lost a lot of that community connection. Um, and then on top of that, also in the post nuclear family we have, so many people are divorced now. So you don't grow up in a household where mom and dad are together, or even now grandparents are together. And the fragmentation of family, that core base of support is just fragmented. I mean, I grew up in an Air Force family, and my grandparents lived in California, and we were in Virginia or in Oklahoma or all over the place, and so that sense of community is very lost in my generation. um, I'm kind of uh, my grandfather was a pilot in World War II on B-24s, and I think I spent I, when we were luckily stationed in California, so I did get to spend some time with him. But beyond that, I think I only saw him 12 times. and that would be the, hey, we're taking a vacation, we're going to go see grandpa for a couple days sort of thing, and that was it, you know. And so for me that's normal, but that's when I think about a lot of the veterans today, you know, they're coming from fragmented homes. They're coming from, they grew up in East Coast and now they're got stationed here on the West Coast and they're got out of the Army and
Well, and
you
I
know.
I've shared before on here. I know when my unit came back, we were like above average. We were, I think it was like 20 to 30% of units. There's usually like divorces or separations after deployment. Ours was 55%.
Yeah.
So more than half of us were like separated or divorced, or some of them, thank thank the Lord, got back together and stuff, but some of us didn't.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it was rebuilding, trying to rebuild a home that was no longer there. Everything that you were trying to survive to come back to technically
Was
was
broken.
gone.
Yeah.
And so you had to rebuild that. And then there were the pieces of, yeah, I got to share with a friend yesterday discussing the survivor's guilt.
Mhm.
I get to that's one thing about here is seeing fellow soldiers that were in my brigade or in my units that are no longer with us, and there's a lot of guilt. I think a lot of responsibility of, okay, I made it home.
Mhm.
um I need to make sure that I honor that sacrifice. um but how?
Right.
you know it's like, hey, I would have gladly traded places with you, but at the same time, we we did make it, so what now? And you watch, I watch some of the challenges that the soldiers have had since coming home. Of, you know in some cases, we've been home since 2005, the first time.
Mhm.
We were like 2003 to 2005, and so they still struggle with some of those things from that far back.
You always will. I mean, I've interviewed and talked with World War II veterans that just completely broke down and just completely lost it, because that memory, that feeling, does not go away. The problem becomes, how do you deal with that? How do you work through that? How do you, make it bearable? I guess, for lack of a better word. Um, and that's the toughest nut to crack, because you need those support bases. So, um, we had COVID, and had uh, two people that were in my circle that were veterans who committed suicide during that time, and a lot of it I give to the isolation, the sense of, there's no community. I can't go hang out with my friends. I can't do this, that, and the other. Um, People chewing on each other over politics and epidemiology, whatever you want to call it. It didn't help. And one of them was even a Christian brother, and I couldn't even, when I learned the news, I was like, that's a bad joke. Don't even go there. And they're like, no, literally he did. And I was like, no way.
it,
So
it was we you know we've lost more since we've been home than we did over.
yeah.
And it's, I it, it I don't like, I don't ever like us being a stat, but the number of about 17 and a half a day to 22 a day, depending on which set of statistics you're reading.
Yeah.
And it it's that's the piece that I think is haunting my group. It's like we all, uh, we all served with somebody or know somebody
Hmm.
um, that that has made that choice,
Yeah.
and that's the tough part. It's like you when you talk every time we see and now we're at that age where we're starting to lose some from a Johnny had cancer or
Hmm.
so and so. We're starting to lose folks from medical reasons now,
Yeah.
but it's each one is a gut punch.
Yeah.
Each loss is a gut punch, and so I'm thankful that you have. Do they still do you still have the groups that come here and meet and
Oh
talk
yeah.
or
Oh yeah. Uh, we have a small group that shows up on Tuesday. Usually, the largest group is on Wednesday. Then we have another group on Thursday, and Friday is kind of a hit or miss. But yeah, Wednesdays the if you want to hear sea stories and lies, you just come on down on Wednesday.
I I
but
was I was so excited when we just recently had the passing of Sheriff Logan
mhm.
retired, and I remember when I got to come show him that I had made staff sergeant, and he was hanging with a bunch of Marines, so I of course had to openly, I'm sure I made some comment about crayons,
Yeah, you forgot your
but but
you
but it was
forgot
like,
your box of 64.
yeah, it was, but it was just such a great connecting point. Here was a man who had been my father's supervisor when he was
Hmm.
a sheriff deputy. My dad had been in Vietnam as shore patrol, and but to see him with that group of Marines, I was never so proud to make fun of a group. I mean, they were just such a great. That was a great ragtag
Hmm.
group that was meeting here, and was very the connection that the military has to this place. Uh, you feel it.
Hmm.
It's not like when you go to other. I'm sorry. It is not the same feeling when you go to other military museums. There is definitely a sense of connection with this place, and I think it's because when you walk out of here, you are gonna there's something here for everybody
Hmm.
that's gonna be, hey, that was during my time, or hey,
Yeah.
grandpa served in that, or
Yeah.
hey,
I get that connection. But yeah, just kind of backpedaling on it. So yeah, after all of that, realized that I don't know, for years and years I've been like since here 2008. Um, we always had veterans coming in, always needing help of some sort. um, they would always see, our title, Veterans Memorial Museum, and they would say, "Oh, veterans means Veterans Affairs, so they must be part of the VA, and must be, helping out veterans." And we would always try and do whatever we could. Lee started a lot of kind of recognition days, and we had, World War II dinner dance, we had Korean War Day, we had POW MIA Day, Vietnam Veteran Day, and we'd bring in bands and guest speakers and things like that to recognize the various ones, and people would come, and it was very very healing for them to again, hey, you're thanking me for my service 20, 30, 40, 50 years afterwards, and I feel recognized and appreciated. Um, and that was very, very beneficial for them. And so, uh, but then, all these years of people kind of showing up, and I would try and direct them towards thing, and I just finally said, we've got to come up with a concrete way. We've got to come up with a better way. People are already, veteran status, active duty status. They always get drawn here. Then what can we do to make it more proactive? And so in 2022, in September 2022, we started the Veterans Journey Forward program. And the whole idea was provide as many services for our veterans that we can. One of the biggest gut punches for our community was in 2019 when the VA pulled out their CBOC clinic, which had a service officer, did eventually have a mental health counselor that was there from time to time, had a few nurse practitioners, so veterans could get basic care, rather than having to drive all the way up to American Lake or Seattle. And I pulled that out, and that was a gut punch. Well, then COVID hit, and everything changed. But during COVID, like I said, September 2022, it was, we got to do something. We can't just sit idly by. And realizing that one of the key things was, I don't want a veteran to have to pay for anything. I don't want them to have to go through an extensive amount of paperwork, um, especially when it comes to mental health, because unfortunately, our model for mental health is, you show up at a facility and it's kind of like, okay, well, we're going to do an intake. So we're going to have that initial interview, and we need you to tell us about the worst day of your entire life. Um, and you're going to relive all of that, the sights, the sounds, the smells. You're going to have a great time. And then somebody with a master's degree is going to be like, yeah, maybe this person should see a professional. And you go see that professional, and you're going to probably tell that story 2 or 3 more times. And then probably they're just going to be like, you know what? We got some antidepressants for you or something like that. I'm not a very big fan of that method. I've realized just from watching, or from the guy bringing his own little coffee pot, this is where I want to hang out. This is who I want to talk to. That peer counseling is really the way to work this out. Where I know my own brother-in-law, 3 tours of Iraq, 3 Purple Hearts later, several marriages later, violent outbursts and things like that. He finally was like, yeah, I'm going to go get some help. Drove an hour and a half to go get some help, and came back, and he was like, yeah, I'm never going back. That guy was never even in the military. He has no idea what I've been through. He wasn't even through basic training, never. And it's like, okay, we can't. How can any veteran look at somebody like that and go, you don't even know what it's like, to be in a grenade pit? What do you mean you can't? You want to try and help me, you can't connect that. So we are very big on peer counseling. So that was the basis, was peer counseling. And when you start something, you also realize, well, it's like business. You got to, your first intention may not be the best one, but it was kind of like trying to wave a flag, like, hey, free mental health care for you guys here. Come on, stop by. And it was like sitting at the desk going, crickets, like, where are they? They didn't want to come.
And it probably wasn't, gonna be honest, it chances are it wasn't even your fault.
No, no,
It
no,
was
it's not our fault.
anybody who had went through that, like coming home. You had 2 things going on. Is one is you just wanted to get home.
Yep.
You didn't want to be set in a hospital for mental health for weeks or months.
Nobody
at a
wants
time.
to admit to problem.
And the other is, got to be honest, some of the counselors at the beginning were weren't very conducive to either healing or finding out what the problem was.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, you realize this isn't going to help me one bit.
Right.
It's like I can try to cooperate to a certain point, but this is obviously, I need to just shut up and say, hey, I'm fine, and get on with life,
Mm-hmm.
and never solve the issue.
Yeah, that isn't all too common. And to be, I mean, don't want to throw it all under the bus. It is the military's way of trying to help, and I think throughout the years of this, I think they are getting a little better at it. But again, I think it's side tangent on it is it's kind of like when the government shows up and says, you know what, I know how to make your family better, and I go, what are the names of my kids? Well, I don't know. Well, of course, because you have a grand idea, you don't have that personal connection. So that's why I always come back to the model of the community. The community knows your kids. They go to school with them. They know what are the needs specifically here in this region. I mean, the needs here in this region are way different than the needs in Olympia or Thurston County or Tacoma or Seattle. It's totally different community. We are rural, bunch of old loggers coming around here. Much different needs than larger cities. Unfortunately, larger cities usually also generate a lot more resources, and so that's been the difficult thing. But the nice part about it is Washington State has a peer counseling program, where we can train people that are have served in the military, have their own experiences, demons, whatever, and we can train them to be able to help people on their personal journey as well. It's now 80 hours of training. It used to be 40. But last year we had a training of about 16 people that were veteran status and went through the peer counseling training, and I view peer counseling training as kind of like first aid. Um, it's you may never have to use the skills that we would teach, but boy, if you're working in a business and they have a veteran, and you're a veteran yourself, and it's like Joe's having some problems. It's like we teach you motivational interviewing, boundaries, resources, all these kind of wings, how to direct conversations so that you're not doing the typical military thing of like, well, you know what I did? I'm in the military. I did this thing. No, 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 I did this thing, and I did, no. That doesn't help anybody. That doesn't bring things to um, teaching them. I mean, literal simple things like you don't say like, "What's wrong with you?" Because now the veteran's like, "Oh, there's something wrong with you." It's like, "No, dude, what happened? Tell me what happened." Those are those key things. So we're very big on peer counseling because again, it's that community base. It's like, hey, I had experiences and you've had experiences, and like let's work this out.
And it's amazing with just a little bit of training you can bring somebody that's very heated or elevated down a few notches to
Yep.
where it's like, okay,
Yep.
I can sit down and
Yep.
and talk about this.
Yep. And we have that availability here. Uh, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our peer counselors, phone number is totally available to any veteran anytime. And we've had some very good successes with that. And so that's kind of the mental health aspect. But again, when we first started, they weren't knocking down the door. A lot of veterans started coming to us like, "Hey, we need access to our VA, facilities. We need to file with the VA about this disability. I need to get medical care. These sorts of things." So we, again, as anything, we try and pivot to whatever the needs are. Here in Lewis County, we have a lot of Vietnam veterans. They got out of Fort Lewis, now JBLM, and they kind of looked at, I don't want to live in the city. I'm going to go live in the woods. I'm going to go live in Lewis County, and settled, started their lives here. Successful and things like that. Well, they're aging out, and their medical conditions from Vietnam are catching up with them, especially a lot of the Agent Orange. And cancers and things like that are really ravishing our veteran community of the Vietnam era, and so it's filing for them on their behalf, and our service officers now are running into, hey, you've got to talk about this incident where you were wounded or exposed to Agent Orange or things like that. And the funny thing is now they are opening up, and then they're like, if you'd like somebody to talk to about this, we have a peer counselor available. And that connection now has led to sort of things. But the service officer, again, it provides for a lot of these people the medical care that they need, compensation that they've been deserving. Politics is politics, and I just tell people turn the TV off because that's the worst thing. But we get this president's going to take my benefits away, and I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. This is going to happen, and I'm like, no, it's not going to happen. But the
And these are people who served in like some of the worst conditions. Agent Orange is
yeah,
just terrible. I mean, even what it did to Korean War veterans who are just now dealing with it, and
yeah,
watching that process, and they've gone all these years with without the dignity of medical treatment,
hmm
or the ability to get medical treatment,
yeah,
and some of it's that generational stubbornness of, well, no, I'm not a sick call ranger. I'm not
yeah,
getting,
yeah,
nobody's helping
yeah,
me. I'm getting by this on myself. And it's one of those things where it's like these these institutions were put into place to help soldiers,
hmm
or sorry, service members.
yeah.
So Army,
Army, yeah,
Army
yes.
always gonna be. There's only one branch of the military. And it's me.
That's
It's
me.
a, it's a, but uh, it. There really is something about the generation before mine, and I served with the last of the Vietnam
Hmm.
veterans.
Yeah.
Going to sick call was not an honorable thing. It was
No.
not a and if there's one thing that I if I could change or would change, and I've seen it over and over again, is like soldiers who are still serving. If you break something, you get exposed to something, you need to get that reported, get that put on your medical
Yep.
record, your military medical record, and you need to deal with a lot of these before you step out of uniform, because after uniform, you, your your
It makes
veterans
it a lot
your
more
veterans
difficult. Yeah.
can attest to it. It is so hard and such a long process,
Hmm.
and the process is not in the favor of the veteran. It's
No, no, because yeah, that's the well, and as I was, kind of talking about, a lot of the times we hear veterans, they like, oh well, I don't have it as bad as Joe over there, so that's why I don't want to file. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, time out. When you join the military, they made a lot of promises. You know what? If you get hurt or killed, we're going to take care of you. That's the contract that a government has with the soldier. Um, we will do our best to make sure that should something bad happen to you, you will be taken care of. Your family will be taken care of. This is a promise that has been made ever since Roman times. This is the contract. Why do I go off to war? Well, one, your country needs you. What if something bad happens to me? I shouldn't go off to war because got a wife and kids. No, we will take care of them. That's the contract. But we get a lot of veterans that are just like, yeah, I don't want to file because that means that it's going to drain money, and somebody else who's worse off than me isn't going to get it. And I'm like, it's mandatory spending. Your government made you promises. Make them fulfill on those promises, and the whole um, the whole process in itself is, to me, ironic. It's kind of like the VA is there, they have these resources, they have this funding, they have the medical professionals, they have the mental health professionals, they have all of these things, but their goal is to try and reduce the budget as much as they can so that they can limit this amount of service, and they're counting on you to have an attitude like that. And I say, you served in the military, make them pay you back what is owed to you. Um, and the ironic part is we have service officers that are trained by the VA on how to fight the VA on the veteran's behalf. It's the most ironic kind of thing you have. Like, we have to have somebody who's trained professionally to argue the case for the organization that has been set up to promise all of these services.
yeah.
And throughout all of these years, I have seen many service officers with the most best intentions um, want to help veterans in our community, but a lot of the times they were volunteers or they were very low paid, and their job is not easy because our service officer, she sees 4 or 5 veterans a day, which means 4 or 5 times a day you are hearing about the worst part of somebody's life in their service, and now they're trying to claim like, hey, I need help with this injury, I need help with my suicide ideation that I have. It's rough, and when you're a volunteer or low paid, generally I've seen them kind of fade away because it's too much. And so, our project right now, it's a lot of money, but they're a full time paid employee, and I do not accept um, any low standard. I will not accept any low standard. We have one of our employees. One of her specialties is appeals. So you file, the VA comes back and they say, "Nah, we don't want to give you anything for that." And it's like, "But I jumped out of the airplane and broke my leg in 7 places." Well, you might have, it might have happened, but and her job is to literally look through that denial and like find the contradictory information. And it wasn't too long ago, she worked on one file for 7 hours, 3 inches of paperwork going through. and it was literally just a couple of sentences that the VA had kind of misquoted, I want to say, that was the reason for their denial. And it was like, no, no, no. Here's this. You said this, and here's the medical. You can't contradict the medical. And so, going to apply for that. And, in a bureaucracy situation, you don't have 7 hours for one veteran. You don't.
No.
And so that's my thing. And it's like, is it almost counterproductive if you were to think about, I'm going to run this as a business where I have one employee and they're getting paid so many per hour and they work 7 hours on one veteran. And by the way, we don't charge. We will not take anybody's back pay percentage or disability check percentage. It's all free. We don't take anything because my personal thing is veterans like yourself and anybody else who walks through the door, you already paid a price, and the VA should be paying you back for these instances. So we are, we get burdened by it, sure, because it's not. But I'm not going to have a veteran walk in and not get 150% of our attention. That's unacceptable for me if it's anything lower than that. And so, we have one of the best service officers in Washington State. Um, she has a 83% success rate with claims, and that's even where sometimes people will go, well, I don't want to file for that claim because I don't think we can get it. We're like, nope. We are going to go. If you believe this is service connected, we will fight everything we can for tooth and nail, to make sure that gets connected. We're not going to treat you like a number. We're not going to treat you. We have another full-time employee, Lisa. I got tired of people would call my service officer and it would leave a message, and then it wouldn't be, it'd be 48 hours till they got called back, and I was like, well, that's still better than the VA, but that's not acceptable to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, we brought on a full receptionist. So it's like, you got to call. And sometimes these veterans, I mean, they get a letter from the VA, and sometimes there's 20 letters because we filed for 20 different claims, and they get these letters, and they're, like, this is 3 pages of gobbledygook that I don't understand. And it's like, okay, well, she will sit there and talk with you, and or say like, hey, come on in, let's talk and let's look at these letters just to make sure that we're not going to give you false information, and find out what it is. And then of course, as veterans always know, it's kind of like, there was at one time where you got too much pay, and they're like, well, we're just going to take it out of your paycheck for the next 6 months. And it's like, well, how am I going to, feed the baby now? They get that first check and they're like, I just got $20,000 in my bank account. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid they're going to take it away. That's like, no, dude, that's your back pay.
It's
So, and and that makes me feel warm. It's like, I don't want to, that our veterans are getting the best care possible here. Is it a financial loss? Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't make a dime off of this. We gotta rely on fundraising events and grants and contracts and begging, to make it happen. But I'm like, you know, um, if we can make a difference, then we'll make a difference. And
if my viewers wanted to donate, how would they do that?
we take cash, check, credit card, no children. Uh, but yeah, no, they can. We have our website, veteransmuseum.org. I'll say it again: veterans, spelled with an S, museum.org. You got to make sure you put the S on the end of veterans. Otherwise, it goes to the museum in California, which doesn't have the S on their logo. So it's kind of funny. We get phone calls and mail from them, and vice versa. But veteransmuseum.org. There's a donation place on there as well. And then we can literally take a credit card over the phone, by calling us at 360-740-8875, and we can do that. But we're also always looking for volunteers as well to help out. From answering phone calls, being trained as a peer counselor, if that was something that you'd wanted to do. Um, Again, I always look at peer counseling as just like a CPR class. Don't go into it expecting that you're going to go work at a behavioral health organization, because they don't really hire a lot of peer counselors. But wherever you're at in your workplace, if there's a veteran there and you're a veteran yourself, you can always easily make that connection. Um, you can be in Safeway and have a veteran just have a complete meltdown and be like, okay, hey, now I can, well, let's try and help this person out, kind of a thing. Just like if somebody drops over and it's like, oh, it's CPR time.
A great tool
Yeah.
for your toolbox,
Yep.
and also if you are considering mental health field, it's a great opportunity
Yep.
to build those hours, those
Yep.
volunteer hours,
Yep.
possibly internship, that
It's a
type of thing.
possibility, yeah, but
It's
but most often than not, it's literally my view is Washington Healthcare Authority. They have these trainings on Washington State all the time, and you can go through, get on their website, take their mandatory testing, which takes about 20 hours online of just some basics. Then you get yourself on a list, and then they have these trainings throughout. The nice part about it is, these trainings are not just military. They don't really have when we do ours, it's very military specific. They're a little more on the general side, because they're training people that have suffered through substance abuse or domestic violence, these kinds of things, so they can help people in those areas. But yeah, you can go ahead and take it, and they're free of charge. They don't charge people to go to it, and
Wow.
sometimes they'll, if you have to drive away, they'll give you a stipend for fuel and even housing at times as well. So, but it's very worthwhile. Unfortunately, right now it's basically 2 weeks worth of work. So plan that vacation.
No doubt.
So,
Well, as we come to the end of the tour, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for the work that you all are doing here. Um, Definitely thank you for the fellowship over the years.
yeah.
I'll try not to make it so many years. Next time I come home, it's strange coming down home now that
Yeah.
my parents have passed away over the last few years, and so I don't get here as much. But it definitely was just made my day when I came in, and how much you've grown, how much more is here. Hope you all get a chance to come to the Chehalis Veterans Museum, uh, just off of I-5 in Chehalis, exit
77.
77.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Easy peasy
I
to
should know
find.
that. That was my exit for home for 20 years. I was like, well, you really do lose it if you don't use it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. Well, luckily you weren't playing with JP4 because you'd have more issues with memory.
that's a fact. That's a fact.
So,
Thank
brother,
you
thank you.
very much,
Yeah.
and thank you for all of this.
Well, as I always tell veterans, actually thank you more than anything else, because every veteran, whether they served in wartime or peace, you've provided me, a civilian, and my family, the greatest gift of all, and that's freedom that we have here in America. That's guaranteed and paid for, peacetime and war, by every single veteran, whether you served 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, or an entire career. You provide that for me and my family, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. All right.
Yep.
I will come.